Hi everyone, welcome back. We're talking about physiology and histology of the skin today. I know I say this about so many chapters, but this is definitely one of my top favorites. We just get a lot more specific about the skin instead of the body as a whole like we did in anatomy and physiology. This is more skin specific, really zooming in on the cells and the all-important layers of the skin, of course, which are going to be really important to know. So let's get right into it because it's a long one today. Skin histology and physiology, the foundational sciences estheticians need to know, involve the study of the anatomy, layers, and function of the skin. There is much more to being an esthetician than simply performing facials and selling products. They must commit to being lifelong learners as research in the industry changes and advances constantly. An esthetician's primary focus is on preserving, protecting, and nourishing the skin. We've got some definitions here. Histology is the study of the structure and composition of the skin tissue. Physiology is the study of the functions of living organisms. And an esthetician is a specialist in the cleansing, beautification, and preservation of the health of the skin on the entire body, including the face and neck. Estheticians who specialize in the health and beauty of skin are referred to as technicians, skin therapists, or specialists. They must commit to being lifelong learners. Scientific research changes and advances constantly, and new technologies are emerging. Clients value an esthetician's comprehensive understanding of the skin. You can make personalized treatment recommendations and prescribe a home care regimen. Estheticians should study and have a thorough understanding of the physiology and histology of the skin because the layers, components, and functions of the skin all work with other body systems to protect and regulate the skin and other parts of the body. The study of the skin, physiology, and histology includes learning about the aging process as well as interpreting the effects of UV damage from the sun or also from tanning beds, hormonal influences, and nutrition on skin health. Each of these factors affect the skin's health and appearance. There is much to study about the body's largest organ and how to best maintain its optimum health with a deeper understanding. The skin therapist can treat this system. Fun facts about the skin. The thinnest skin is found on the eyelids. It's only a 1/16 of an inch thick. That's why the eyes are very likely to age the fastest and before any other skin on your body because it is so thin. Skin averages an area of about 22 square feet. Skin accounts for about 15% of body weight. The skin has three main layers: epidermis, the dermis, and the subcutaneous layer, which we will talk very in depth about soon here. Skin is the thickest on the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet. The skin of an average adult weighs 6 to 9 pounds, depending on the source of the research. Everyone has the same number of melanocytes, the cells that produce skin color. It's just that some people's cells produce more melanin than others. Every inch of your skin has a unique stretchiness and strength factor based on location. For example, the skin on your knuckles is very different than the skin on your belly. Every minute your body sheds 30,000 dead skin cells. The epidermis is much thinner than the dermis. And scar tissue lacks hair and sweat glands. Describe the attributes of healthy skin. Skin, which if we're talking about body systems, our skin is the integumentary system, is the largest organ of the body and serves as a barrier to outside elements. Skin layers, nerves, cellular functions, hair follicles, and glands all work together harmoniously to regulate and protect the body. Hormones, growth factors, and other biochemicals control the skin's intricate functions. The basic material and building blocks for our body's tissues are proteins. Amino acids form peptides, and peptides form proteins. Proteins have many roles in maintaining skin health. The skin has miles of blood vessels, millions of sweat glands, and an array of nerves within a network of fibers. Appendages of the skin include hair, nails, sweat glands, and oil glands. So when a dermatologist goes to school, they don't just learn about the skin, they also learn about its appendages, which are the hair, nails, sweat glands, and oil glands. So they're experts in diseases of all of those areas. Healthy skin is slightly moist, soft, smooth, and somewhat acidic. Distinguish the 6 primary functions of the skin. These are definitely going to be important. I would write these down. Primary functions of the skin are for sensation, protection, heat regulation, excretion, secretion, and absorption. Let's get into what each of those 6 functions mean. Sensation. Nerve fibers in the skin sense when we are touched, and depending on the type of stimulation, sensations on our skin cause us to feel, react, or move. Different nerve sensors help us to detect different sensations and perceive changes in our environment such as heat, cold, touch, pain, and pressure. Nerve sensors send messages to the brain, and motor nerves send messages back to relay to the body how to respond. I like to picture if you touch something really hot and you have that automatic reaction to pull and you retreat your hand back. That's a great example of how sensation is really, really important to keep us safe. Sensory nerve fibers are most abundant in the fingertips and are designed to be one of the most sensitive parts of the body. That's why we feel everything with our fingertips. Protection. Our skin protects our body from injury and invasion using many defense mechanisms. Firstly, our acid mantle. This is a protective barrier made up of sebum, lipids, sweat, and water. It forms a hydrolipidic film. Hydro means water. Lipid means oil or fat. So hydrolipidic together means oil and water, which provides an oil-water balance on the skin's surface and protects skin from drying out and exposure to damaging external factors. Healthy skin has an average pH of between 4.5 to 5.5. Balanced pH is important to protect the body from pathogens. A pathogen is anything that could be harmful, like, for example, an unhealthy bacteria, and to regulate enzymatic functions. It is part of skin's natural barrier function, which is skin's mechanism that protects from irritation and intercellular transepidermal water loss. I know that's a mouthful. We can abbreviate it as TEWL, T-E-W-L. Basically, transepidermal water loss is water evaporating off of our skin, coming out from the deeper layers. And this is actually a really great picture, a great example of that we'll talk about in just a second. Lipids or protective oils are part of the intercellular matrix, which is fluid between epidermal cells and contribute to protection of barrier function. Damage to the barrier layer is the cause of many skin problems. Let's pause right here and take a look at this really good picture. This is such a good description. So we have normal skin here on the left. We see that our barrier function, which is made of sebum, that's oil. Stratum corneum layer, which is the very top layer of our skin. All of these cells are very healthy and plump and perfectly in a line. It looks kind of like a brick wall, built really well, functioning how it's supposed to. We can see moisture here in the deeper layers of our skin is staying in our skin, which is exactly what we want, and it's just transferring throughout our skin, staying within our skin cells, hydrating and lubricating. Our sebum barrier, now keep in mind, this is not an actual layer of the skin. It's not a cellular layer. It's just a thin layer of sebum, but that's our skin's barrier. The stratum corneum is actually our uppermost skin layer. You see allergens like mites and house dust, viruses, so we could call these pathogens because they're anything that have the potential to be harmful to us. They're bouncing right off. This is a healthy skin. In our damaged skin over here, we have kind of breaks in the foundation, and this is transepidermal water loss happening right here. It's evaporating off the skin surface because the barrier function is not intact. Also, pathogens are now getting in. Melanocytes. Melanocytes are cells that produce pigment and protect our body from harmful ionizing UV rays. They produce pigment granules called melanosomes, which produce a protein called melanin. Melanin travels from deeper basal cell layer of the stratum germinativum to the surface through finger-like projections called dendrites and shields skin from negative effects of sun and indoor tanning. I know this sounds confusing, but we have slides coming up that really break this down and explain it a lot better. Heat regulation. This protects the body from the environment. Average body temperature is 98.6, and when the outdoor temperature changes, the skin adjusts to warm or cool the body as necessary. The body maintains thermoregulation through evaporation, perspiration, radiation, and insulation. Protection from heat. Sweat glands release heat through perspiration, cooling ourselves through evaporation on the skin surface. Blood flow and blood vessel dilation also assist in cooling the body. Protection from the cold. This is accomplished by constriction of blood vessels and decreased blood flow. When cold, the erector pili muscles, I would definitely write this down, these are responsible for goosebumps. Attached to hair follicles contract and cause goosebumps. The reaction warms the skin by the air pockets that are created under the hairs that stand up. Excretion and secretion. Excretion is sweating. Secretion is oil coming out of the skin. Excretion, or sweat, comes from our sudoriferous glands. We casually call them sweat glands, but their proper name is sudoriferous glands, and that's going to be important to know what its proper term is. Sudoriferous glands are our sweat glands. They excrete perspiration and prevent the body from overheating. Heavy sweating can cause loss of fluids, dehydration, and loss of mineral balance needed to keep the body functioning optimally. Secretion, these are our oil glands, but properly called sebaceous glands. So important to remember. These are the appendages attached to follicles that produce sebum, or pores. Sebum is an oily substance that protects the surface of the skin and lubricates the skin and hair. These oils keep the skin soft and protected from outside elements. Sebum slows evaporation of water and helps maintain appropriate water levels in the cells. Emotional stress and hormone imbalances can stimulate oil glands to cause the flow of sebum, which can cause skin problems. When you're stressed, your body does release hormones that kind of excites the oil glands or the sebaceous glands, and that's why if you're under a lot of stress or maybe you're on your menstrual cycle, you're having hormonal changes, you may notice more breakouts. Absorption. Absorption of chemicals, hormones, moisture, and oxygen is necessary for the skin's health. Vitamin D is also synthesized and produced in the skin upon exposure to the sun. The skin selectively absorbs topical products, serums, and creams through the cells, hair follicles, and sebaceous glands. Penetration is determined by the size of the molecule and other characteristics of the product. Lipid-soluble products penetrate better. The routes of penetration are through the follicle walls, sebaceous glands, intracellular or transcellular. Small molecules with permeable cell walls can penetrate the cells, while larger cells with non-permeable cell walls can be temporarily absorbed by the glands in the skin and travel through intracellular spaces. I know that was a mouthful, but basically what we're saying here is lipid-soluble, meaning it dissolves in oil, penetrates better because the upper layers of our skin are more oil-based. The lower layers in the dermis are more water-based, and so there are some active ingredients in skincare products that need to get to a specific target site to do their job. So for example, this is a reason why not all skincare products are created equal, because even if they have the same ingredients, maybe they don't have the right delivery system, because they could have a great ingredient, but if that ingredient isn't getting to its proper target site, then it's not doing its job. So we have different vehicles, one being a liposome, or microencapsulation. There are ways that cosmetic chemists can encapsulate active ingredients to where, say, the active ingredient is water soluble, but in order to get it down to the water soluble layers of the skin, it has to first pass through the more lipid soluble layers. So it's encapsulated in a lipid, and then that lipid goes through and brings the water soluble ingredient inside to the more water based layers of the skin. Alright, layers of the skin. We are going from deepest to the surface. We are going to start by talking about the three main sections of the skin. You can call them layers, but then each of these three layers have their own layers within. So what we're doing is we're zooming out, and then we're slowly going to zoom in on each main layer, which has its own layers. Again, this whole time we are going to be working from bottom to top. You could say deepest to surface. Subcutaneous layer. It's also called the hypodermis sometimes. The subcutaneous layer is kind of that fatty layer of the skin that provides us with insulation. The dermis is the next layer up. You see it's pretty thick. It's just about the same thickness as the hypodermis or subcutaneous layer. The dermis has all of our kind of vascular activity. Veins, hair follicles are living down there, arteries as well. Glands too, so our sweat glands and oil glands. And then on top of that is our epidermis. And you see it's much smaller. It's about 20 times thinner, or you could reverse and say that dermis is 20 times thicker than the epidermis. Going back here, these are our three main sections. We are now going to zoom in on the lowest main section, the subcutaneous layer. The subcutaneous layer, also known as the hypodermis or superficial fascia, is composed of loose connective tissue or subcutaneous tissue, also known as adipose tissue. This layer is 80% fat. It creates a protective cushion that gives contour and smoothness to the body, and it is a source of energy for the body. Moving up to the next section, the dermis, also called true skin, is the support layer of connective tissues above the hypodermis. The dermis supplies the skin with oxygen and nutrients through a network of blood vessels and lymphatic channels. It is about 25 times thicker than the epidermis and consists of two layers, the reticular layer below and the papillary layer above. So you may see kind of two different numbers here. Sometimes it'll say 20 times thicker and sometimes it'll say 25. And again, so the subcutaneous layer, it actually didn't have any of its own layers within it, but the dermis and epidermis do. If we cut the dermis in half, the lower layer is called reticular and the upper layer is called papillary. Zooming in now on the layers of the dermis, the reticular layer is denser and deeper layer of the dermis, comprised mainly of collagen and elastin. Damage to these fibers is the primary cause of sagging, wrinkles, stretch marks, and intrinsic aging or loss of elasticity in the skin. Collagen and elastin are broken down by UV ray damage, smoking, and environmental influences. The papillary layer connects the dermis to the epidermis. Dermal papillae are membranes of ridges and grooves that attach to the dermis. Attached to dermal papillae are either looped capillaries that nourish epidermis or tactile corpuscles, the nerve ending sensitive to touch and pressure. I love this image right here. It's a really great way for us to understand the structure of the skin. We have a younger skin on the left, older skin on the right. And I like to think of this as a bridge or any type of other like construction structure, really. These brown pieces in the shape of an X, this is the collagen. The blue pieces, also shaped like an X, these are elastin. We do have more collagen than we do elastin. Elastin is kind of like the filler, and collagen is what we have the most of. It's the most abundant protein we have. You can see these structures are nicely formed, and they're holding up the skin to keep it flat. Think of a bridge. Again, you need the surface of the road to be flat, and that's exactly what these structures are doing. Over here, we have broken elastin fibers and collagen atrophy. Whenever one of these structures collapses, it would make the surface of our bridge indent, right? So that's exactly what happens on the surface of our skin. The dermal epidermal junction. Basically, this is just the area where the dermis meets the epidermis. The dermal epidermal junction connects the dermis to the epidermis. It consists of layers of a connective collagen tissue with many small pockets and holes. Collagen fibrils from the dermis are embedded into these layers to provide strength and adhesion. Keratin filaments on the epidermis side ensure strength and adhesion. Some states define the esthetician's scope of practice as not beyond the DEJ. We as estheticians, we cannot do anything that penetrates into the dermis. Finally, moving up to the epidermis, this is our thinnest main section of the skin that we've talked about so far, but it has the most layers, and each layer is very, very thin. It has 5 layers, and let's get into the epidermis. This is within our scope of practice as estheticians. The epidermis is the outermost layer of the skin. This is the epithelial tissue that covers our body. It is a thin, protective covering with many nerve endings. The epidermis is composed of the 5 layers called strata or stratum. So each of the 5 layers begin with the word stratum. Moving from bottom to top, we have stratum germinativum, also called the basal layer, stratum spinosum, stratum granulosum, stratum lucidum, and stratum corneum. Stratum corneum is the uppermost layer, the one that we can see when we're looking at our skin. Understanding how the skin's cell layers function is important in choosing ingredients and treatments. Keratinocytes. These are cells composed of keratin, and they comprise 95% of the epidermis. Basically what it's saying is keratinocytes are our skin cells. That's what we call any of the cells in the epidermis. And now we are zooming in, working from bottom to top as always on the epidermis. So let's just go back real quick just to make sure we're all on the same page. We first talked about the hypodermis or subcutaneous layer. That layer is very thick. It's our fatty layer, and it's not broken up into any layers beyond. Dermis is the next one up, also very thick. If you divide it in half, the bottom is reticular, the upper is papillary. We're now talking about the epidermis and its 5 layers, and we're going from bottom to top. Stratum germinativum, this is the growth layer. It can also be called the basal layer. It's located above the dermis and is composed of a single layer of basal cells laying on top of a basement membrane. You can see here it's so thin. This big layer right here, this is just showing part of the dermis. This thin kind of whitish layer right here is stratum germinativum, or our basal layer. You can see it's so thin. This is the active layer where stem cells undergo continuous mitosis to replenish skin cells that are shed from the surface. Stem cells are mother cells that divide to form 2 identical daughter cells. Some stem cells and daughter cells remain undifferentiated and keep dividing for constant self-renewal. They either remain stem cells or become something else like keratinocytes. In the body, some daughter cells go on to become skin cells, glands, follicles, tissues, or organs. Daughter cells not able to divide anymore have the capability to program themselves to end up as one specific cell. Cells in the basal layer produce the necessary lipids that form cell membranes and hold cells together. What we're basically saying here is that we have stem cells living in this bottom layer of our epidermis. The stem cells are stationary and they're constantly going through mitosis, creating 2 identical daughter cells. that move up throughout our skin and eventually migrate and shed off the skin surface, and the cycle continues. All the movement of our cells in the skin, it's going from the bottom to top. They get thinner and thinner as they move up. They get flat and kind of hard and dead. They lose their nuclear composition. And once they get to the surface and they've gone through their life cycle, they flake off and new are formed constantly. Stratum germinativum is also the layer that has our melanocytes. Let me break this down for you in a way that you can remember, because we have melanocytes, melanosomes, and melanin. Melanocytes are our stationary cells that live in stratum germinativum. You could call them a stem cell in a way because they're stationary. They send, I think of it kind of like an Amazon delivery truck. So the melanocyte, the big cell that is in charge of all the melanin synthesis and the color of our skin, again, we all have the same amount of the cells, the melanocytes, site means cell. They send a melanosome, which is our Amazon delivery truck. So it's like a packet that houses the melanin. And then the Amazon delivery truck drops off the package into a cell. And the package is melanin. So the melanocyte sends off the truck driver, which is the melanosome, and the truck driver drops off the actual delivery, which is the melanin. Moving up one layer to stratum spinosum. These are the spiny cells. If you're ever asked what layer is the spiny cells, it's easy to remember: spinosum, spiny, spine, spiny. This is the largest layer as far as our epidermis goes, as we can see from this picture. Here, cells continue to divide and change shape, and enzymes are creating lipids and proteins. Cell appendages resembling prickly spines become desmosomes, keratin filaments assisting and holding cells together. Other cells found here. We have our Langerhans immune cells. These fight against foreign material for us. We also have lamellar granules containing lipids to maintain our barrier function. Stratum granulosum, again, grainy cells, like granular, easy to remember. Composed of cells that resemble granules and are filled with keratin. The production of keratin and intercellular lipids takes place here. Enzymes dissolve the desmosomes holding cells together. As these cells become keratinized, they move to the surface and replace cells shed from the stratum corneum. Stratum lucidum, the clear cells. So we can remember this because lucid is like seeing clearly, or translucent, clear. This is a thin, clear layer of dead skin cells under the stratum corneum, a translucent layer made of small cells that let light pass through. This layer is the thickest on the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet, and they are where epidermal ridges provide a better grip. Cells here release lipids, forming bilayers of oil and water. The layer also forms our unique fingerprints and footprints. Two important things to remember about stratum lucidum is it's thickest on palms of the hands and soles of the feet. That's why we have that tougher skin there. And this layer forms our unique fingerprints and footprints. Finally, our uppermost layer, this is what we see when looking at our skin. Stratum corneum, the horny cells are the horny layer. Also known as the horny layer is the top outermost layer of the epidermis. The esthetician works extensively with this layer. It is very thin, waterproof, permeable. It regenerates itself, detoxifies the body, and responds to stimuli. Keratinocytes on the surface have hardened into corneocytes. Basically, they're still keratinocytes, which are our epidermal cells, but you can call them corneocytes when they're in the stratum corneum just to differentiate. The layer is named because of these scale-like cells. Keratinocytes are continually shed from the surface of the skin through a process called desquamation. So just remember, desquamation is the process of our natural skin's exfoliation. The cells are replaced by new cells coming from lower strata. Again, cells are forming in the bottom, moving up to the top. The process of desquamation and replacement is known as cell turnover. Cell turnover rate slows with age, and understanding the process will help you make better decisions on how to treat aging skin. Average adult cell turnover rate is every 28 days. This is a young, healthy adult. By the time you are over 50, it slows to 42 to 84 days. So it's very, very quick in babies, very quick in teens. Healthy adult skin turnover is 28 days. That's why we see our clients once a month. Because every 28 days, we're seeing a lot new, their skin's going to be different from last time. There's new cells. Something that can aid in speeding up cell turnover would be AHAs and retinoids. Okay, so we did touch on melanin. This is such a good picture. We have the melanocyte down here, and it's kind of reaching up. These are the dendrites, the finger-like projections. They're depositing, they're sending off packets of melanosomes with melanin inside and depositing it. You can see the little granules of pigment in those cells, and those cells bring it up to the upper layers. That's why I say if you have an injury, or some people get post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation from a pimple or a breakout or an injury on the skin, it takes a while for you to see it change color and darken into either pink, red, or brown, because the injury happens on the surface of the skin. It triggers the melanocyte down here, because again, our melanocyte is kind of an immune cell. So whenever there's damage, even if it's not from the sun, it thinks it needs to generate melanin for us to protect our skin. So it's triggered, but then it takes a while, again every 28 days, for these cells to then reach the surface where we can see that pigmentation. The hair follicle as an appendage of the skin. Hair is an appendage of the skin. It is a slender thread-like outgrowth of the skin and scalp. Hormone influence. So there are hormonal influences to hair growth, such as being male or female, or just the area of the body or your ethnicity as well. The nail is an appendage of the skin and is a hard translucent plate that protects fingers and toes. Onyx is the technical term for the nail. It is composed of hard keratin. Describe the functions of the two types of nerves. Motor nerves and sensory nerves. Nerves are cord-like bundles of fibers made up of neurons through which sensory stimuli and motor impulses pass between the brain or other parts of the central nervous system and the eyes, glands, muscles, and other parts of the body. There are two types of nerves. Motor nerves, or efferent nerves, are nerve fibers that convey impulses from the brain or spinal cord to the muscles or glands. They stimulate muscles. Secretory nerves are motor nerves attached to sweat glands or oil glands, which regulate excretion from sweat glands and control sebum output to the surface of the skin. Sensory nerves, or afferent nerves, are nerve fibers that send messages to the central nervous system and brain to react to heat, cold, pain, pressure, and touch. Talking about our oil glands here, good description right here. It's important to remember that our sebaceous glands are attached to our hair follicles, which are our pores. The dermis of the skin contains two types of duct glands, each producing different substances. Our sebaceous or oil glands are connected to hair follicles which produce oil, which protects the surface of the skin. Glandular sacs open into follicles through ducts. If ducts become clogged, comedones, which are blackheads or whiteheads, are formed. These glands are larger on the face and scalp than anywhere else. That's why you notice your arms never really get oily, but your face does. Sudoriferous, or sweat glands. These help regulate body temperature and eliminate waste products by excreting sweat. They have a coiled base. Here's a picture right here. They have a coiled base and duct openings at the skin surface, which eliminates fluids and minerals daily. Excess loss of fluids can lead to dehydration in the body. Sweat is actually controlled by the nervous system. I know that's interesting. You would think the integumentary system, because that's our skin, but it is controlled by the nervous system. That's a very tricky one that I would make sure to make it a point to remember, because you might be asked it on the state board and your first thought would reasonably be integumentary system. But our nervous system, I like to think of when you are nervous about something, a lot of people tend to sweat, and that's a good way of remembering it. Immune system. Our immune system is a complex defense mechanism that protects the body from foreign substances and is activated when antigens are identified. Antibodies are molecules formed to fight and neutralize bacteria, viruses, and antigens. The following cells are part of our immune system. Langerhans cells. They are dendritic in form, meaning they have those long finger-like projections. They work to absorb, process, and carry antigens to the lymph node for further action. They're predominantly in the stratum spinosum, but also present in other layers of the skin. Leukocytes are white blood cells that have enzymes to digest and kill bacteria and parasites. They also respond to allergies. T cells are a type of lymphocyte that attack virus-infected cells, foreign cells, and cancer cells. They get their name from the thymus gland where they mature. Thymus starts with a T, so they're named T cells. They're actually formed in the bone marrow, but they mature in the thymus gland. Blood and lymph nourish the skin. Networks of arteries and lymphatics send essential materials for growth and repair through the body. Water, vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients are important for skin health. Blood supplies nutrients and oxygen to the skin. Nutrients come from food molecules, and topical products aid in nourishment as well. Lymph bathes the skin cells, removes toxin and cellular waste, and has immune functions for protection. Skin health depends on the cellular membrane and the water-holding capacity of the stratum corneum. Intercellular lipids and proteins surround cells to provide protection, hydration, and nourishment. Lipids are reduced if skin is dry, damaged, or mature. Topical products containing peptides, hyaluronic acid, ceramides, and other lipids benefit skin that is damaged from both intrinsic and extrinsic aging. Exfoliation also removes and depletes lipids, so topical product application is necessary for balance. Ceramides are a group of waxy lipid molecules that are important to barrier function and water holding capacity. 50% of lipids in the stratum corneum are ceramides. So we do produce these naturally in our skin, but you might also see skincare products that include ceramides. The body replaces billions of cells daily. Cells of organs are replaced entirely every 6 to 9 months. Cells of bones are replaced every 7 years. Elastin and collagen are not easily replaced by the body. Skin does not regain its once pliable shape after being stretched or damaged by UV radiation and environmental pollution. Research shows that skincare treatments and ingredients such as vitamin A, which are retinoids, alpha hydroxy acids, alpha lipoic acid, and other growth factors stimulate cell turnover and reduce visible signs of aging. Regular cell turnover is necessary to keep skin healthy. Sun damage, we know UV has the most significant impact on how our skin ages and is a proven carcinogen which causes cancer. It also damages the DNA of our skin. And about 80 to 85% of our aging is caused by sun exposure. UVA is called our aging rays. They have longer wavelengths that penetrate deeper into the skin, affecting our genetic makeup, the DNA in our skin cells. It also breaks down collagen and elastin, and that's why we nickname it the aging rays. Easy to remember because UVA, think of A for aging. Again, easy to remember, UVB, B for burning. These are shorter rays. They don't penetrate as deep, but they kind of pack more of a punch because they're shorter and stronger. So basically they hit the surface of our skin and cause burning and tanning. And then UVC also exists, but we don't receive any on Earth because the ozone layer keeps it out. Free radical damage. I always think free radicals are literally the most fascinating thing that I've ever learned of when it comes to skin. Chemically active atoms or molecules. So free radicals are chemically active atoms or molecules with unpaired electrons, making them unstable, which speed up the aging process. Molecules may lose electrons due to damage from UV rays, the environment, poor nutrition, unhealthy lifestyle, or injuries. Free radicals are reactive oxidants that search the body for other electrons that will allow them to become stable, neutral molecules again. They take electrons from compounds in the body, which destabilizes healthy molecules, creates more free radicals, and causes a chain reaction. What we're saying here is we know that with molecules or atoms, you've got to have paired electrons. So you have to have the same amount of protons as electrons. Free radicals, you see right here, so they're paired, or I'm sorry, same amount of electrons. They have to be even number in a pair, sorry. We have an unpaired electron right here, so it would seek an electron to make it stable again and steal from your healthy cells. But if you think about it, then that one is stable, but then it just created another free radical, and so that's why it's a chain reaction, because as it steals, yes, the original one is now taken care of, but it caused damage to the one it stole from. Antioxidants work because they donate electrons to stop the chain reaction. That's why we use vitamin C on our skin, especially in the morning, because we use it to protect us from pollution and the environment in general, sun damage, as well as we're out and about and free radicals are being created on our skin. Using a good quality antioxidant, widely agreed that vitamin C is the most potent and effective for topical application in fighting free radical damage. It protects us throughout the day and donates electrons to those free radicals to stabilize them and stop that damaging process. The environment. Pollutants in the air from factories, automobile exhaust, and even secondhand smoke can all influence the appearance and overall health of our skin. They not only affect the surface appearance of our skin, but also change the health of the underlying cells and tissues. This is why routine cleansing, moisturizing, skincare in general is super important, especially end of the day. I would argue that morning is important as well, especially if you're using active ingredients before bedtime. You're going to have to wash those off before going out into the sun, because a lot of active ingredients are photosensitizing. Lifestyle choices. We also have intrinsic and extrinsic aging. Intrinsic would be like genetics, for example. You're going to age similarly to your parents. Extrinsic is going to be kind of the climate you live in, the amount of sun exposure you get, and things like that. Glycation. Glycation is the destructive process where damaged structures and tissues gradually accumulate in the body. It is caused by an elevation in blood sugar. It is the binding of protein molecule to a glucose molecule, resulting in the formation of damaged, non-functioning structures known as advanced glycation end products, or AGEs, which is applicable here because it causes us to age. Scientists have established that anything that causes a rise in our blood sugar results in inflammation on a cellular level. The sugar can attach to collagen in the skin, making it stiff and inflexible. A lot of this does have to do with diet. Sugar, of course, and just unhealthy, greasy foods are a factor. But also, unfortunately, browning or broiling your food. Like, who doesn't love brown mac and cheese at the top where it's been broiled? That causes glycation in the skin, too. Aging skin and hormones. As we age, our skin changes significantly, partially because of shifts in hormone balance. Hormones are the internal messengers for most of the body's systems and are significant in the skin's appearance, strength, and health. Women's skin is continually in a state of change due to hormonal changes in the reproductive and endocrine systems. Estrogen fluctuations affect the skin, and as skin ages, capillary and other vascular walls begin to weaken, lipids are reduced, and lymphatic system is less effective. Glands slow down, and there are even fewer fibroblasts, thus affecting cells, collagen, and elastin. Fibroblasts are our cells that create collagen, so they're very, very important to us. Testosterone levels become dominant as estrogen decreases, which can increase sebum production, pore size, and hair growth on the face. This is why a lot of times as women age, you will see a hair or two on the chin or maybe in like on the upper lip area. And it's not so much that we're getting more testosterone or we're creating more testosterone, but because estrogen is decreasing, it's just that there's a higher prevalence of testosterone in our system. Microcirculation. This is the circulation of blood from the heart to the arterioles. I never know how to say that. Sorry, I'm just to be honest with you. To capillaries, to venules, and then back to the heart. Hormonal changes are one cause of microcirculation problems common in mature skin, such as Kuparose skin. Kuparose skin, or telangiectasia, is the dilation of capillary walls. I'm sure if you've ever seen someone with rosacea, or even without rosacea, you may see a very small little distended capillary visible in their skin. That is what we call a telangiectasia or Kuparose skin. Anyone with rosacea is going to have telangiectasias, but you can have telangiectasias without having rosacea, if that makes sense. So with age, with a lot of sun exposure, they can distend or even rupture. They dilate and become visible on the surface of the skin. Or a lot of times people who do a combination of smoking and drinking, we do see telangiectasias because drinking dilates the capillaries and smoking constricts them. And so the constant back and forth, the expanding and dilating, really stresses those thin capillary walls, and they can dilate or even rupture. Rosacea is a chronic vascular disorder characterized by varying degrees of skin redness and congestion of the skin. Acneic rosacea includes papules and pustules. We don't talk about it in this chapter, but we do have different subtypes of rosacea. One being pustular, where it creates pustules on the skin, but it's different from traditional acne, and you do have to know the difference because it doesn't respond to typical acne treatments. HRT, hormone replacement therapy. This is often suggested to balance estrogen for women experiencing menopause. Some HRT may be linked to breast cancer. Therapies may be derived from animal source estrogens or plant source estrogens. Phytoestrogens are estrogens from plants and are about 200 to 400 times weaker than animal estrogens. Choosing an HRT program should be done with the help of a medical professional. It is not within the scope of practice of an esthetician to make recommendations. Summary and review. The skin is the largest organ of the body. Of course, our body system for the skin is called the integumentary system, and we need to remember that the skin also has the appendages of the hair, the sudoriferous and sebaceous glands, and the nails as well. The skin protects us from the environment, regulates body temperature, and provides sensation. The skin can be affected quite easily by most salon or spa services. Know what products can penetrate the skin and what effects they will have on your clients. The subcutaneous layer is the deepest layer and contains adipose and loose connective tissue. The dermis is the layer below the epidermis and consists of 2 layers, papillary and reticular. The 5 layers of the epidermis are stratum germinativum, which is the basal layer, stratum spinosum, granulosum, lucidum, and stratum corneum. Part of providing skincare services involves understanding how the aging process, sun exposure, hormones, and other influencing factors affect the skin's health and appearance. I did forget to mention when we were talking about the layers of the skin, I do have kind of a mnemonic to help remember. I used to have a student named Lauren, and she made up kind of a phrase to remember it, except she went from top to bottom. So because we have corneum, lucidum, granulosum, spinosum, germinativum, she made up, can Lauren get some grits? So whatever helps you remember. I love making up little brain tricks that'll help you remember the layers of the skin, because they can otherwise be difficult to remember even with repetition, because they're just such, they're very scientific terms. It's hard to remember things like that sometimes. So thank you guys for tuning into this. I really hope this was helpful and educational for you. I love making these videos, and I get good feedback that having someone read it to you makes a big difference. So thank you as always for being here, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time.